Good evening, guys and dolls. You are watching Kellyanne on the Four Queens YouTube channel, and this is Tea and Tarot, where I drink tea and I talk about tarot. And this episode is a little bit overdue, so hopefully you'll enjoy it. The tea that I'm drinking this evening is lemon and ginger because I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, and I suppose, like most people on this hemisphere, it's coming to that time now where I'm just feeling a little bit snotty. If that's not too graphic. Don't get me wrong, I love this time of year, but it's just kind of making that transition from summer to winter can be a little bit difficult on the sinuses sometimes. So yeah, lemon and ginger. And if you're into herbal magic, then you'll know that lemon is a great purifier, as well as all the stuff it does for you health wise. It's really great with cleansing and healing, and ginger's really good for revitalization and empowerment and just generally feeling revitalised. A little alien on my cup there. That's actually delicious. Very good. Okay, so I've decided to discuss a few cards today that I feel pertain wonderfully to the subject of disappointment. And disappointment is something that I've been coming to on and off over the last few months, thinking about the impact it's had on me over the course of this year and last year. Things have kind of gone from shit to champagne for me in a lot of ways. I don't know if that's true for many of you. I think 2011 was a pretty weird year for pretty much everybody that I know. And everyone that I knew as well, like, I don't know, the trees seemed to branch out pretty far with that nobody seemed to have a stupendous year in 2011, and a lot of people experienced a lot of disappointment and a lot of setbacks, or seemed to want to get a lot of stuff done that didn't really come to fruition properly. So I think that because my 2011 was a little bit crappy as well, and a lot of things didn't go according to plan, and I fell very ill at one point, and it all kinds of sort of go a little bit tits up, as we say in England. And then 2012 has been so amazing. So many things have come out of the woodwork that I didn't expect, and I think it's actually been a much more positive year all round, which is really surprising considering all the doomsday 2012 things that have been said and things that have been going on. So it seems almost like we kicked back at that a little bit, which is great. So yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about disappointment and tarot and how they fit together. So the first thing I started thinking about was how disappointment can be so good for us, and how it can nurture us so much, and how that might seem like a weird concept for people when they first begin to think about it. But I think a lot of people on a spiritual path do often consider disappointment to be an opportunity for learning and an opportunity for reassessment. And the card that I feel speaks very clearly about that is the Seven of Pentacles. Now, this guy in the Seven of Pentacles is clearly waiting for the harvest. He has invested a lot of time and energy into something, and now he's kind of expectantly standing over it, waiting, in this gestative state, just fascinated, intrigued, but also very tense, maybe a little bit angsty. He's putting a lot of expectation onto this project that he's put everything into, and he's waiting for that harvest to come. And he's looking a little bit forlorn about it, or maybe a little bit pent up, maybe sort of a little bit rigid, a little bit anal about the whole thing. He's finding it difficult maybe to enjoy this waiting game because he's so nervous about whether or not it's going to come to fruition in the correct way. Now, when disappointment befalls us, let's say for example with this guy that his harvest, his crop has failed, and he's not been able to get the finished product from all of that hard work and time and energy he's put in, his disappointment is going to feel really full on, and it's going to feel horrendous, and it's just going to feel completely unjustified and unfair, and he's going to feel bitter and resentful and all that stuff. But the beautiful thing about the disappointment that's manifested in his life is this image of him right here, caring about something that much, caring about something, bringing that passion to something, even when it's difficult, and even when it feels uncomfortable for us, and even when it feels dangerous in a way for our emotional spectrum to put so much into something, and to have so much passion, and to have so much desire to see something come off. It's very beautiful to have that, because sometimes we go through stages in our lives where we really don't feel passionate about anything, and we really don't feel that anything matters. And those stages in our lives are They feel like liberation for a little while, but then they quickly become very dangerous, because we realise that we are letting go of all of the things that used to be important to us and make us who we are, and we're kind of drifting, we're in a free fall, and that doesn't feel nourishing for very long. It starts to feel quite scary and quite alienating, and you know, when we can't look around and view all of the beautiful stuff about our own lives, or when we can't look at our passions and our pursuits and our goals and our desires and really feel amazing and feel connected to the world through those things, then we've fallen into some kind of a nihilistic despair. And the fact, you know, that he cared so much about this thing he'd invested into means that he's got something there. He's got that passion there. He's connected to the world. He's connected to his own life. He injects and fuels importance into his own life. So whether or not he sees the crop rise or fall, in the end, doesn't really matter when he looks at what he's got at core level, which is that desire to live life to the full and that desire to make something of his life while it's still here and while it's still going on. He wants to live in that moment, and he wants to see something come to fruition, and that's a really beautiful thing, whether it's actually achievable or not, whether it actually comes together in the way we're going to think it will or not. Doesn't really matter when we look at what we've got in the end, which is that foundation stone, that feeling that we want to do something with our lives, and we want to appreciate the chances that we have, the opportunities that we have to allow something to manifest in a really positive way. And I think that ties in beautifully, really, to the Eight of Cups, which is this image of this person who's walking away from a disappointment, essentially. The cups represent a structure that seemed as though it was going to become fully formed and beautiful, and it was going to make sense, and it was going to be something in its own right. But if you'll look at the structure itself, one of the cups is missing there. There seems to be something that didn't quite become whole, something that was kind of stillborn in a way, creatively, or it just didn't come together in the way that this person was expecting it to. So they've decided to pack up, and after careful consideration and long thought, they've decided that they need to go and find a better place. They need to go and find a new place. They need to go and begin something else and take the lessons that they've learned from this initial setback and move on to the next project or the new phase with a new lease of life and with a new way of looking at things. So even though the card looks very stark and very scary, it actually has a really beautiful positive message, and it's positive reinforcement for those of us who don't want to stay stuck in the mud and don't want to succumb to resentment, and actually do want to kind of pick up, dust off, and carry on with the next phase as well as we possibly can. So I think that it ties in wonderfully, these two cards tie together wonderfully with regard to what disappointment can do for us in a positive sense. And this card pertains specifically to the reassessment that disappointment affords us. It gives us a chance to reassess, to re-examine, to explore, to decide why what went wrong did go wrong, and to decide what we're going to change in the next phase. We can become scientific to an extent about what we've tried and what we can do away with, what we can improve, you know. We can verify our results, and we can take a look at life in a manner that makes us feel proactive and active, not passive observers, but active participants in our own lives by using disappointments as failed scientific experiments and looking at the notes that we've kind of made in our minds about what went wrong and what we kind of contributed to within those mistakes, and how we can change and mould ourselves and understand our circumstances more fully to get a better result in the future. So these are two ways in which disappointment can be really positive for us, and I think tarot often speaks highly of disappointment. I know that sounds really crazy, especially since I go on so much about what a positive tool it is, but I think it helps us to see disappointment in a way that allows us that richness and fullness of feeling so crappy, because so much good can come out of that, and so many seeds can actually be sown in that barren piece of earth that we feel so terrible about. You know, spring tends to come with it quite a lot, and we realise that it's only through going through those low phases that we realise how best to tend the garden in the future so that it comes to fruition in the way that we want it to. The sun is kind of, to me, in this context at least, a suggestion of how we need to pick ourselves up. I really believe that every negative thing we go through and every situation that doesn't come to light in the way we wished it would, every painful thing we have to endure, is a process. You cannot just go straight to being happy and overjoyed again. People that say to you, get over it, don't focus on the negative, carry on being positive, that's easier said than done. I think sometimes if we have anger inside of us, or we have that disappointment, if we start to try and wash over it straight away by being overtly positive and by kicking ourselves up the arse immediately and going straight on to the next thing, we don't deal with the crap that actually is there underneath. You know, we can't start building a house on top of this crap. We need to clear the earth so that the foundations are right there for the concrete to be laid on. And the disappointment is the crap in this situation. So we need to shovel that crap a little bit, and I think that takes to go through it somewhat. There are many tarot cards that speak highly of the value of actually taking yourself through that dark time, taking yourself through the feelings that it brings out of you and the things it entails, and maybe what it reminds you of from your past, you know, patterns that repeat themselves, vicious cycles that are tending to perpetuate, and just peeling the layers further back, I think, basically, not just dealing with the disappointment that's in the situation here and now, but dealing with how disappointment in general makes you feel in that deeper, darker place in the subconscious that you do not often visit. You know, that is a train station that not many trains pass through. And disappointment is a chance for that express train of the self to pass through and re-examine what's actually there. So I do think it's a process, and I do think, yes, you are entitled to cry about your disappointment. You're entitled to vent about it, to bitch about it, to stay there for a little while, to stay on that platform and kind of feel that and absorb it. What you don't want to do is start enjoying your pain or falling victim to victimhood itself. You don't want to start enjoying the vent more than you're enjoying actually cleansing yourself and clearing yourself so you can get some good out of the situation. It's very, very easy to fall prey to victimhood, and many tarot cards as well tap into that feature of disappointment, or that feature of fear, where we decide that it's become part of our character, or we've decided that the pain itself defines us more than the good that could come out of that pain. That's dangerous. That's not a place we want to drop anchor. So the Sun card is kind of maybe a little bit of a message of eventually coming to the other side of that initial slap in the face that is disappointment, and now deciding that we're going to inject some positivity into the proceedings. And that starts with little things, really, like understanding yourself to the extent that you know what kind of things will get you back on track. And it could be very light-hearted things like a favourite film or a favourite album that you can dance around to while you clean the house. You might need to go on a long walk in solitude by yourself. You might need to have a little bit of retail therapy. Perhaps it's friendships that keep you going, different friends that you would select for company in different circumstances that you know would make you feel kind of right with yourself again and ready to get back on the horse. And it's so great that the Sun card in Rider-Waite includes a kid on a horse, because get back on the horse is such a charming term for exactly what we're often tapping into when we speak about this card. It's all about getting back on the horse. It's not actually this overwhelming card of complete total positivity 100% of the time, where we're some kind of like crazy alien that never seems to get down or never seems to get bugged by anything. I actually think that it's more about getting back on the horse. It's more about saying, okay, you know that positive light side of you exists, use it. Tap into it, use it for something good, you know, harness that power, harness the power of sunlight, harness the power of hope and enthusiasm and optimism, and laughing things off as well, not taking yourself so damn seriously all the time, having a little bit of fun with it. And this is the first stage, I think, we get to when we begin to be able to use our positivity for something good and appreciate the lessons that it's given us. And in a way, I'm kind of a little bit annoyed with myself that I didn't put the World card in here as well, because the World, as I was saying in a former video, is all about the process of individuation and becoming a whole person and accepting both your flaws and your attributes and understanding yourself on a new plane and on a new higher plateau. So in a way, that does speak marvellously about the value of disappointment and how positivity is the first step towards realising, okay, this has happened, I can't take it back, I don't have a time machine, but damn it, I'm going to integrate the lesson it's given me into my whole being, and it's only going to make that whole being expand and become more full and become more joyous, you know. So I think that's probably a great message as well. I've selected the Fool because I think it's very important when we're thinking about the theme of disappointment to understand that we need to attach more to our desires sometimes than our goals. And desire and goal are different words, and they have different connotations, of course. I spoke about goals in my first Tea and Tarot vlog that I did. And I think there were very many other avenues I could have gone down with that theme, and many different things I could have talked about, but you know, I would have been there all night and you all would have definitely been like, move on, honey. So obviously I do kind of select some main cards and some main themes and kind of run with them. But what I would say about disappointment is that often we feel it because we're very attached to our goals, but we're not that attached anymore to our desires. And we need to remember that feeling more attachment and more affection for our desires means that we're in the moment. The desire is here and the goal is here. So the desire is at heart level, and it's the here and now. It's what you want, it's what you will to manifest. The goal, I always feel, is that more planned out version, you know, that version that's got a spider diagram to it, that version that's got a manifesto, a statement of purpose, a decision about how you're going to make it come to fruition. And that's much more cerebral than it is emotional, you know. So the goal is the end point, and the goal is our idea of what the future is going to look like. It's very dangerous to just stick with your love of the goal all the time, and never really make contact with your desire, you know, or check in with your desire, because your desire is what you want in the here and now. And that actually ties in perfectly to something that I was saying in the goals vlog about realizing when your goals are no longer your goals. Okay, if you focus so much on your goals, so much on the end point, so much on like, this is what's going to be for me in 10 years time, this is who I'm going to be, this is what I'm going to have amassed. If we focus so much on that and we allow that to become part of our identity and part of who we are, you know, the fact that we want that is so much a part of who we are as a person, we may not recognise when our goals are no longer our goals. We may not be able to tell ourselves that our goals have completely changed, that we don't want those things anymore, that we feel alienated from those things now, that the things we wanted 10 years ago are not the things we want now, and we need to reassess. And that happens to a great many of us through our lives, you know. 10 years ago, you may have wanted the perfect material life, you may have wanted the gadgets, you may have wanted to be a high-flying business person, whereas now maybe you're thinking more about silence retreats and yoga and, you know, what holistic therapy course you're going to do next. So people change, you know. And I think if we focus overtly on the goal, then the goal will become fixed, it will become stagnant, because it is fixed and stagnant. When we have an idea of what we want for the future, it is a fixed, stagnant, abstract point in time. It hasn't really happened, and yet we feel, because we've visualised it so perfectly, that it's there, it's definite, it's going to happen. That doesn't allow us much room for fluidity, it doesn't allow us to be malleable, it doesn't allow us to adapt to the changes that life puts upon us in waves, you know, the changes we don't expect. So the fool is wandering along, and he's being spontaneous about his journey. He's not really sure where he's going. He doesn't really have a great deal of idea what he needs or what he wants, but he's going on a journey, and he's decided that he's going to be spontaneous about that. He's going to take a few risks. He's going to go down a few different pathways that he hasn't gone down before. He has no map. In fact, in this picture, he appears to be in imminent danger. He's not even looking at the ground. He's absolutely kind of going off into his own world. And I think that that is a great illustration of desire, you know. Desire feels like something now, whereas a goal looks like something over there, kind of thing. So desire is much more immediate, and I think when we stick with disappointment, when we dwell on disappointment, when we don't move on from disappointment, it's because we had decided that the future was set out, and we are mourning the future that we thought was going to be. And that's a very sad state of affairs when we think of our future as set in stone, and we imagine that the stone has been smashed to pieces and, you know, it no longer exists anymore and our future is like a black hole. In reality, the future isn't set in stone, it's much more kind of written in the clouds, if you will. It's malleable, it's changeable, it moves with the changing weather, it moves with the seasons, it looks different at different times, but it's always beautiful, and it's always something we can take from, and it's always something we can go back to. And just to finish off, the moon, and I've talked about the moon before in my favourite tarot cards vlog, the moon has a great theme of breaking your delusions down, rescuing yourself from any rigid belief systems that you have, don't succumb to intellectual materialism and spiritual materialism. Don't put a name on yourself or put a label on yourself or decide what you want or who you are or what you want to be or where you want to get to, and drop anchor there without ever reassessing those goals, without ever really reassessing who you are. Reassess constantly, reassess enthusiastically, do it all the time, challenge yourself, you know, work out from one day to the next whether you still think what you thought before. You know, that's a great way of doing it, and it's a great way of being. Don't be rigid. And I think if you stick with disappointment and you curl up with disappointment, it's because you're being rigid. It's because you're deciding that the only version of the future you wanted is now no longer a possibility, so why bother with the future at all? And if you think about how long you may have dwelled on a certain disappointment, you'll realise exactly how rigid you're being and exactly how many other opportunities and possibilities and pathways you're actually ignoring by putting the blinkers on and having the kind of tunnel vision that prolonged disappointment can feed into. So that's been Tea and Tarot, and I've really enjoyed it, and I hope you have too, and I will see you all again for another episode soon. And thank you so much for watching and for all your support. It really does mean everything to me. My silly little channel it's just been constant smiles since people have started talking to me and wanting me to watch their videos and conversing with me. It's just absolutely lovely, and I'm gushing now, so I'm just going to carry on with my lemon and ginger and leave you all to your devices. Thank you so much.